Good evening, friends. I, on behalf of Beyond Law CLC, welcome you all in our series of webinars wherein we have been trying that there can be knowledge sharing from the professionals, judges, lawyers, lecturers, professors, vice chancellors, to the effect that we believe in the common concept of knowledge increases by sharing. And therefore, to have a knowledge imparting from a person who, while being a judge of the Punjab Haryana High Court, Honorable Mr. Justice Kuldeep Singh, always believed that the justice should not be delayed, because he always believed that speedy justice and speedy trials are the requirements so that the faith of a common man and in the society at large should be increased. And speedy trials, there has been always a talk right from 1980 when the judgment of Husnaira Khatun came, and there are large number of judgments wherein the said judgment has been followed. The common thread running between them is that once the accused should have a right to speedy trial. Though as such, Justice Kuldeep Singh doesn't require any introduction, but for those who are beyond Punjab Haryana High Court, for them we are just informing that he rose from the Punjab Judicial Services as he had joined in the year 1983, and he has also done LLM. His judgments, while being in the subordinate courts, were path-breaking, and so much so that trend of making the judgments, which were bold and also path-breaking, had always been his hallmark. While being in the Superior Judiciary, he had been District and Sessions Judge at Bhatinda and Fatehgarh Sahib, and he had also worked as a registrar of the Punjab Haryana High Court, and also the presiding officer of the Industrial Tribunal. Therefore, there has been immense experience of different spectrums, and as such, we made a request to him to kindly give the insights, because we invariably talk of the topic that right of speedy trial is correlated with Article 21, and it is one of the facets of Article 21 of the Constitution of India. What are the ways and what are the means as to how the law has dwelt are one of the key issues which there will be in insights. As usual, we will be having question and answers. Those who are interested, the participants watching us live on the Facebook and on this platform, they can post their questions around 5:40. And the Honorable Judge has kindly consented to give his insights. Those who, besides putting up the questions, want to give certain important facets which they feel would be paramount for the facilitation of the speedy trial, those suggestions are also welcome, because we all believe that the lawyers, the judges, and all persons are all limbs of the society, and we have to work for the betterment. Thank you, sir, for consenting to give your insights from your vast experience as to how there can be speedy trials. Over to you, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we hear that a trial is taking 5 years, 10 years. Only a few days back, we heard that a trial in Rajasthan took 35 years to decide. So the question is, are we ready to accept this delay? I think today the society is not ready to accept such a day. They want speedy justice. It is meant not only for the accused, but for the victim also. Speedy justice is equally important for both the parties. For the accused who have actually committed the crime, and for the accused who are falsely involved, or for the accused in cases where all of them are falsely framed, it is equally important that the Damocles sword on their head should be removed as early as possible. The right of speedy trial is not expressly provided in our Constitution. In Rajan Dwivedi versus CBI, the Supreme Court held that our Constitution does not expressly declare that right to speedy trial as a fundamental right. The right to speedy trial was first recognized in Hussaina Khatun's case, reported in AIR 79 SC 1360, wherein the court held that a speedy trial is implicit in the broad sweep and contents of Article 21 of the Constitution of India. The Supreme Court held that a reasonably expeditious trial, I stress, reasonably expeditious trial, is an integral and essential part of the fundamental right to life and liberty enshrined in Article 21 of the Constitution of India. I emphasized reasonably expeditious trial. I remind you here that a trial was decided in 2 days, in 3 days, in say 4 days, 7 days. So it is said that justice hurried is justice buried. So in our zeal to speedily decide, we should not lose sight of the case that a reasonable time is required to go in depth into all the aspects of the case and then decide it with a cool mind. I would also point out that there is sufficient provision in the CRPC itself for the speedy trial. Section 309 of the CRPC provides that in every inquiry and trial, the proceedings shall continue from day to day. I emphasize day to day until all the witnesses in attendance have been examined, unless the court finds the adjournment of the same beyond the following day to be necessary for the reasons to be recorded. Then there are provisions that ordinarily it is not to be granted. The fact that counsel is busy in the other court is no ground. Then the adjournment ought to be granted subject to cause and only when it is beyond the control of that party. So what we see when I joined the service in 1983, I saw with my own eyes, and some of the youngsters might be forgetting, that a session trial will start on Monday, and by the Saturday, the judgment is delivered. This is I have seen with my own eyes. So I have seen practically how the trials were conducted. Unluckily, after 83, the Punjab fell under the spell of terrorism, and there started the deterioration in our system. The matters were adjourned repeatedly. The witnesses say police officers are not available, the public is not available. So then it started taking time. Now what is happening that the trials many times are taking normally 3 to 5 years, and sometimes even 10 years and much more than that. So what is required to be done in this regard? First of all, I will point out that in a constitutional bench of the Supreme Court, in Abdul Rahman Antule versus R.S. Nayak, formulated 11 propositions which are to be served as guideline. These are not exhaustive, but still these are some of the guidelines. The Supreme Court says, a fair, just and reasonable procedure implicit in Article 21 of the Constitution creates a right in the accused to be tried speedily. It is in the interest of all the concerned that the guilt or innocence of the accused is determined as quickly as possible in the circumstances. Second, right to speedy trial flowing from Article 21 encompasses all the stages. That is important. Speedy trial is at all the stages, that is investigation, inquiry, appeal, revision, and retrial. The concern underlying the right to speedy trial from the point of view of the accused are that the period of remand and pre-conviction detention should be as short as possible. The worry, anxiety, expense, and disturbance to his vocation and peace resulting from unduly prolonged litigation, investigation, inquiry, or trial should be minimal. And undue delay may result in impair of ability of the accused to defend himself whether on account of death or disappearance or non-availability of witnesses or otherwise. The other guideline is, no one can ignore the fact that it is usually the accused who is interested in delaying the proceedings. It is often pointed out that delay is the non-defense tactic. Mark it. Delay is the non-defense tactic. Delay ordinarily prejudices the prosecution. The non-availability of the witnesses, disappearance of evidence by lapse of time really works against the interest of the prosecution. Next is, while determining whether the undue delay has occurred, resulting in the violation of the right to speedy trial, one must have regard to all the attending circumstances, including nature of offense, number of accused and witnesses, workload of the court concerned, prevailing local conditions, and so on. Next, each and every delay does not necessarily prejudice the accused. Some delay may indeed work to his advantage. Next, the accused plea of denial of speedy trial cannot be defeated by saying that the accused did at no time demanded a speedy trial. Next, ultimately, the court has to balance and weigh the several relevant facts, balancing test or the balancing process, and determine in each case whether the right to speedy trial has been denied in a given case. Ordinarily speaking, the Supreme Court further says, ordinarily speaking, where the court comes to the conclusion that right to speedy trial of the accused has been infringed, the charge or conviction, as the case may be, shall be quashed. But the conditions is, but this is not the only course open. Nature of the offense, other circumstances in the given case, which may be such that the quashing of proceedings may not be in the interest of justice. In such case, it is open to the court to make other appropriate orders, that is, conclude the trial within the fixed time, or where the trial has concluded, reduce the sentence. It is neither advisable nor practicable to fix any time limit for the trial of the offense. An objection based on denial of right to speedy trial and for relief on that account should be first addressed to the High Court. Even if the High Court entertains such plea, ordinarily such plea, it should not stay the proceedings, except in cases of grave and exceptional nature. Such proceeding of the High Court, however, must be disposed of on priority basis. So, in view of all this, we are to see what is actually happening in the courts. Why this speedy trial is necessary? We have seen the guidelines. The speedy trial creates faith in the judicial system and also create the fear of law. As everybody knows, the victim and the accused, that the justice will be done in short time. Therefore, it also acts as deterrent, because the accused may not feel that nothing is going to happen with the passage of time, he may be able to manage the witnesses. It also brings stability and peace in the society. What happens that when there is a delay, with the passage of time, the memory of the witness is likely to fade. The witness may die or he may not be available, thus defeating the very purpose of the trial. Justice has to be given within reasonable time. What is reasonable time depends upon the facts of each case. It depends on number of witnesses, the pendency, and the other local circumstances. So the question is, when I saw the system for the first time, I saw that it was in the session cases, it was speedy trial. And as a magistrate, I also adopted the same procedure. I will hold the trial, magistrate trial, on day-to-day basis and dispose of at the earliest. it can't be said that the trial cannot be decided expeditiously. If you just give some attention, the judge gives some attention to the trial, it can be decided very speedily as compared to ordinary. What happens that the adjournments are given by the judges on mere asking. The lawyers are not interested. They have so many cases, they go to the one or the other court. The prosecution is not interested. The witnesses are not coming. So sometimes the accused is trying to bargain with the complainant party and the victim for compromise. Then the time is short. Sometimes the accused want to pressurize or threaten the witnesses. The time is short. So various tactics are used. Therefore, if the trial is decided speedily, it will check all these mischiefs. For this purpose, now what we have to do now, we have come to a situation where there is an inordinate delay in trials. We have to change the mindset of all the stakeholders, that is judges, lawyers, the investigating agency, that is police, witnesses, and the parties to the case. So what I suggest and what I have been doing as in the trial court as in the sessions court, that I will first go through the list of witnesses and the statement of witnesses which are other required to be gone through at the time of framing of charge. So then you come to know how much is the number of witnesses, how lengthy is their disposition before the court. So then I will say trial starts on Monday. I will say that the complainant and the eyewitnesses can be examined on day one. Or if it is lengthy, only one witness can be examined on day one. Then I will fix the appropriate number, say 2 or 3 witnesses on the first day. Then there are some formal witnesses. These are 4 or 5 on one day you can hold. Then the doctors, these are called on one day. Then the investigating officers who has investigated the case partly or fully, they are called. And in this way, there is a first round of hearing, say starting from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You give 4 or 5 dates. And to ensure that the witnesses come present, you are to make it clear to the police head as well as the prosecution that the witnesses have to come present. For that purpose, I used to ask the prosecution at the time of submission of challan to give the mobile number of the witnesses so that the intimation can be sent to them on mobile also. So the general, in my case, the general instructions were issued by the senior superintendent of police to all the investigating officers that in future, while mentioning the name of the witness, you also mention the mobile number of the witness so that they can be summoned on mobile. So the formality of sending the police official to the witness, that can be avoided. So then you can examine how much witness you can examine on one day, then fix the consecutive dates. Suppose there are 15 witnesses, you fix 3 witnesses for one day, 4 for one day, 5, depending upon how much time each witness take. Then after preparing the calendar, you fix the dates. Of course, while fixing the date, you have to be very careful. The judges have to be very careful that they have to consult the defense counsel. Maybe that the defense counsel is not available on those dates. So after consulting the defense counsel and the prosecution, and they consult their diaries to see on which date they are available. And it is made clear to them and that on that day, you will have to be available and no excuse will be heard. So he sees the free dates. Whenever he's free, you can delay it by say a week or 2 weeks and then fix only those days when the defense counsel is available. So then there is no excuse that counsel is busy in the other court or he has gone somewhere or the other. So then the witnesses can be examined. Then there is one round of hearing. Then the judge is to see which witnesses are left over. For that, he is to, consult the, talk to the prosecution, whether there are some unnecessary witnesses on account of duplicacy or for one reason they are not required to be examined. So then the public prosecutor can give up those witnesses which are not necessary. This can be done on the earlier stage also, but normally the public prosecutor, they insist that let some witnesses be examined. I press that the complainant, victim, and eyewitness should be examined first because they are the first target of the accused. All the pressure is brought on these witnesses to resile. They are threatened, they are offered money and everything, whatever you can imagine. So once these witnesses are examined, the pressure is off. The other witnesses, they will depose according to the record. Say, doctor, he will say whatever there is there in the record. The investigating officer, he will say whatever there is in investigation. So first, the victim, eyewitnesses, and the complainant should be examined. So then the next round is held. In the next round, the other witnesses, leftover witnesses are examined. Say the 5 dates were given, then it is possible that the number of witnesses be small. So the 2 or 3 dates can be given. Say 3-4 witnesses summoned for one day, 3-4 for the other day. So in this way, in 3-4 rounds, the trial is either concluded or near completion. During my career as session judge, I have concluded most of the session trials in less than 1 year, without much efforts. I say without much efforts. In some cases, even the hotly contested cases, these were decided in 3 months after framing of charge. So if the witnesses come quickly, you can decide it earlier. And those cases which were decided less than 1 year, these were hotly contested cases. There was a large rate of defense witnesses. So how you are to control I will come to that aspect also, how you are to control the trial, or the judge is to control the trial. So then comes very useful provision, section 313. Under section 313, the judge can ask any question to the accused without previous warning at any stage. Suppose there is an appointment letter of the accused, he can simply ask the accused without previous warning whether this is your appointment letter. So this will, you can dispense with if he admits it, normally he admits. So then you can dispense with the formal proof. In one case where as per the prosecution, the car of the husband and wife fell in the canal and the husband was able to swim to safety, whereas the wife drowned in the car. I noticed that accused was limping and he was blind from one eye. So I asked the accused without previous warning, whether you know swimming? He said, no, I can't swim. Then the defense counsel intervened that he has not understood the question. I again asked him, I noted down that the defense counsel has intervened. I asked him whether you can swim. He said, I can have some sort of swimming. I know hath pair maar lena, Punjabi ke andar hath pair maar leta hu aise. But I said that you are a competent swimmer. He said no. So then from the river, which was having high current, it was very cold, it was very difficult to swim. So it clinched some of the issue and make the work of the court easy. So these provision can be utilized to ask any question to the accused to cut short the controversy. So then there is an amendment, subsection 5 is added in section 313, where the judge can take the help of the prosecution and the defense to frame the question to be asked under section 313. So with their help, the question can be framed, the judge can examine, feed them in the computer, and then put to the accused, and it will save a lot of time of the court, particularly where there are a large number of accused. My suggestion is that under section 313, the short question should be asked. I give one example. Suppose it is an accident case. You ask the driver whether on that day you drove the truck from this place to that place and rashly and negligently caused the accident. He will say no. When you ask him whether on that particular day you are driving this truck, he will say yes. Then ask him whether you are coming from this particular place to that place, he will say yes. When you will ask him whether you are driving the truck rashly and negligently, he will say no. So the controversy is shortened. Now it is proved that the man was driving the truck, so identity of the driver is not disputed, which is very difficult to establish in accident cases. The man was driving, the identity is established. Now only question is left to be decided whether he was rash and negligent or not. So this can help in cutting short and effectively deciding the case and doing complete justice between the parties. So then when the statement under section 313 are going on, the court can ask the defense lawyer to prepare the list of witnesses so that there is no time is wasted in preparing the list of witnesses and then summoning them. Then immediately the defense, the list of defense witnesses filed and they are summoned and they are examined as early as possible. Then we know that how many tactics are used by the one or the other party to delay the proceedings. For that, it is the judge who is running the show. He has to be proactive. He should ensure that unnecessary questions in cross-examination are not put to the witness. Scandalous questions are not put to him. And in this way, the lengthy cross-examination leading to the adjournment is not allowed. So when the judge is intervening and ruling out the irrelevant questions, the cross-examination is cut short. Some doctors and formal witnesses, they can be examined through video conferencing to cut short the time. Then further, what happens that many times the interim applications are filed. Suppose application for summoning additional witnesses, 311 CRPC. Application for summoning additional accused, 319 CRPC. Sometimes the application are filed by the prosecution for one or the other purpose. And sometimes it is the accused. So they just want to get an order fully knowing in most of the time that what is going to happen with the application. Then they file the revision where the case is stuck up. So the appeal and revision are to be, in such cases, are to be decided expeditiously. There is no fun in speedily deciding the case which is stuck up in the appeal for years together, and it is not the trial doesn't mean the original trial. It includes the appeal, revisions, everything. So the criminal appeals have to be decided quickly. And for that purpose, I will suggest that the present system of admitting the criminal appeals in routine should be dispensed with. Rather, there should be preliminary hearing of criminal appeals. And then if the notice is issued to the other party, then it should be heard. There should be no admission. Admission means the case is put in cold storage and may not be heard for years together, defeating the very purpose of the speedy trial. And the people tend to lose the faith in the system. It is in the interest of the judiciary and every member of the society that the trial as well as the appeals, the revisions are decided expeditiously. Unless, now the people are coming on the road. The case has already happened where rape took place in Delhi and people came on the road and the Hurriedly Act was amended and there are still some loopholes. So to avoid that, if every trial is decided speedily and the appeals are disposed of speedily, it will bring stability and peace in the society. The people will have faith in the system and more people will be encouraged to approach the courts. Now, another thing happens. Suppose during the trial, one of the accused, there are 5 accused, one of them become absent intentionally. And when the trial is going to conclude, he suddenly surrenders. He says, now I'm ready to face the trial. Now what happens that the witnesses have to be recalled, re-examined, and their purpose is served. So what I used to do, that when the trial is at advanced stage and one of the absent accused appears or some proclaimed offender is apprehended and supplementary challan is presented, I will order a separate trial. So at least let those witnesses regarding whom the evidence is completed, they are dealt with. So what I used to notice in the lower court, that the judges before the trial court, they are not that proactive. They take everything in routine. Just somebody asks for the adjournment, they adjourn the cases. Somebody is asking a question, they are not interested. So this results in the delay. For that purpose, the effective monitoring of the trial is required at the level of the High Court. The High Court is also required to encourage the judges to be proactive. For that purpose, we have the academy. There are training sessions, and the judges can be sensitized about the need for speedy justice. I tell you from my experience that if you decide the case speedily within a reasonable time, nobody is going to ask you any question. If you speedily decide any case, of course, it is not hurried, decided in one day, you hold the trial and within 1 or 2 days, you decide within a reasonable time, nobody is going to ask any question. If you monitor the trial, nobody is going to ask any question. There is unnecessary fear in the mind of the judges that has to be removed. So there are some other provision also which can cut short. There is section 294 of the CRPC, admission and denial of documents. There was one case before me where a person was challaned for possessing a weapon without having valid license. When I asked the accused at the time of framing of the charge as a magistrate, he told me that he has the valid license, but it was torn by the investigating officer. Then I asked him to give a copy of that license. Luckily, he had the copy. Then I served a copy on the prosecution and asked him to verify whether this license is valid or not. The prosecution sought the time and filed the written reply saying that it is a valid license for this weapon for which the accused has been charged sheeted. So then on the basis of that admission, I discharged the accused without trial. So that is also very useful provision. Then the speedy and effective justice also need that compensation is granted to the victim. For that, the magistrate can grant compensation under section 250 CRPC. Under section 357, when a fine is imposed, the court can always order that a particular part of the same will go to the victim as a compensation. As a High Court judge, I have been doing it. The major part of the fine was ordered to be paid to the victim as compensation. So then we see that by way of amendment, there is a provision has been inserted. That is the victim compensation scheme has been added under section 357A, where in hit and run cases, the legal services authority or the state can grant the compensation. And in other cases, on the recommendation of the court, the legal services authority or the state can grant the compensation. Overall, I would say that there are already sufficient provisions in the CRPC. There are sufficient guidelines of the Supreme Court of India. Only we are required to change the mindset, and the judge need to have a proactive approach in conducting the trial. He is to closely monitor and take active interest in the trial and see that the trial is conducted in an orderly way. No unnecessary adjournments are sought. No excuses are put forward. I think if all this is done, the speedy trial, the purpose of speedy trial can be achieved without much efforts. From my experience, I am telling you, my brothers and sisters, that I didn't make much efforts. Just I will monitor the trial and take active interest. And hotly contested cases, hotly contested trials were decided in less than 1 year in session cases, and even in the magistrate where the appropriate guidelines are them and they conduct the trial, it can be concluded in same time. So it is possible within the time frame. The problem is of willpower. The judges must have the willpower. They must not be fearful that if they conduct the trial, they take the interest in the trial, somebody will make the complaints. Complaints are part of the service. So one should not be fearful. I'm telling you that in my whole service, nobody questioned me as to how I conducted the trial and why it was decided speedily. Even in the civil cases, the matter could be decided speedily. There is only one instance where some members of the bar requested the administrative judge that the judges should be directed to give one adjournment if some fee is pending with the client. That was the only request I received through the High Court. Of course, one adjournment doesn't matter. A few days time is given. It is up to the liar whether he is able to recover the fee or not. So not only the civil, criminal, but only civil matters can also be decided speedily, but we need the willpower. With this, I concluded. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Since the topic was interesting and as we had discussed regarding the speedy trial, as usual, we found that the topic and insights given by you were short and crisp, but to the point. What we invariably say that if you have to hammer the nail or strike when the iron is hot, you actually struck what was actually required. We have started taking questions there are questions on the group. What are your thoughts on the fake cases? How can the courts help in identifying it? And if possible, it could be, whether it can be possible, even if before the trial is started.
You know, the fake cases, it is a part of our society that the party lodge the false complaints. The first encounter is with the investigating agency. Once the investigating agency receives the complaint, they have the ways and means to find out that it is a fake case. But what is happening, that the investigating officer say he is not committed, he is fearful, there are complaints against him. If he files the complaints are made that he has eaten money in this case or that. So what he does, that he just record the statement of witnesses and file the challan. So for that purpose, initially the investigation agency has to be strengthened, and it is at the initial stage that the justice can be done. All the facts can be verified, and I tell you that when you inquire into the case, it is not difficult to find out whether the entire complaint is false or whether some part of it is false. Say one person has committed the crime and then 3 other persons are also named. So the investigating officer, he can find out what offense was committed and whether any offense was committed at all or not. But you know, today it is a media trial. There are so many news complaints and everybody takes in routine. Some complaint is filed that police is not doing anything. The police, you know, they become fearful and they in a hurry, what they do, they just record some statement, put in the challan and they say, let the court decide. So when the case is received in the court, the powers of the court at the time of framing of charge are very limited. The court is to go through the report of the police under section 173, the statement of witnesses under 161 and the documents. And if a prima facie case is made out, say in the legal terms, say where there are sufficient ground to presume that accused has committed the offense, the charge has to be framed. So initially the court is helpless. The court can't can't become proactive and say that, no, I find that this case is false. He is to go by the challan, whatever is there in the challan, statement of witnesses and the documents. Of course, in heart of heart, in most of the cases, the judges are able to make out at the time of framing of the charge that this case is false or not, and then some part of it is false. And then what the judge can do, that he can take up the case on priority basis. Say there are runaway couple cases. The young couple, they run away. Many times, and most of the time, both the parties are consenting, but the boy is challaned for kidnapping the girl. Sometimes, unluckily, the girl is minor, say few days below the majority. She looks like major, but she is not major. So there is a case law about that also, that what the court is to do. Sometimes they are major and the case challenge. What you can do, that you can take up the case on priority and first record the statement of that victim, what she has to say, whether she supports the case or not. So many times it happens that the girl may or may not support the case, and if she supports the case and the judge is of the view that the allegations may not stand the test of legal principle, that he can decide the case on priority basis. This is what the judge can do.
This is by Sonu Jain. He says his wife had lodged an FIR 3.5 years ago, but she has herself got only examined till now, and her brother is an advocate. Is there any way that I can get a speedy trial from the High Court, or is there any other viability?
Yes, you can always move the High Court under Section 482 CRPC, directing that the trial is being delayed, and the High Court can always intervene and direct that the particular witness should be examined first. So it is up to High Court. The remedy is there. First of all, you can make a request to the court itself. And if the court doesn't accept, only then you are required to come to the High Court.
So this is by Mr. Himanshu. He says that we are happy with the provisions of speedy trial. I'm just reminded that it's often said if we find the traces. It is said that, in fact, Aurangzeb had started the concept of Fatma Namgiri, wherein some streamlining of this criminal procedure was being done. And thereafter, we have been giving all these traces, the judgments, though, as you had rightly said, of Snehra Khatun of 1980, which actually crystallized. But do you feel that after that was judgment in 1980, now we are running in approximately 40 years thereafter? What are the basic challenges which the court faces, or where the lawyer faces, and which we can get it expedited?
You know, I have earlier pointed out that the mindset of all the stakeholders has to be changed. The mindset of the judges to grant adjournments on every request, the mindset of the lawyer to get the adjournment. You know, maybe he is busy or on the instruction of the party to delay, to get one or the other, you know, achieve one or the other object, say the win over the witnesses, seek time for compromise, to offer money to the witnesses and all this. And the other stakeholders, that the witnesses, they shouldn't take it easily. The police say that they go to the court as witness at will. So that has to stop. So it is the mindset which has changed. The sufficient provisions are there, the sufficient instructions are there. So for that, the court judges have to take the initiative. Of course, whenever a judge make a request to the bar or the bar members who are conducting the trial, they always oblige. In my judicial career spanning over 36 years, it never happened at any station that the bar didn't cooperate. When I requested the lawyer that, look, this is a trial and it has to be dealt like this, they will always say, we are with you. They support the judges. So once it starts, the mindset start changing.
So the point well taken that charity begins at home. Mr. Himanshu says we are happy with the provisions of speedy trial, but sir, what if the witness turns hostile? How to make sure that he is right or wrong? There are different provisions in the IPC, but how to tackle such a situation?
You know, witnesses are of two kinds. One is the complainant, on whose complaint the statement, the FIR is recorded. The other are those who are examined at section 161 CRPC. First, I will take up 161 CRPC witnesses. So what happens that the statement under 161 is not recorded verbatim what is stated by witnesses. Many times it happens that the statement is recorded by the IO himself on the lines of the statement of complainant. And sometimes the witness does not know that his statement has been recorded. So he's not made aware as to what is recorded in his statement. So if that witness turns hostile, we can't say that he's not supporting the prosecution and he's not telling the truth. I tell you, once it happened with me that I was a magistrate and one of the investigating officer recorded my statement under section 161 CRPC while sitting in the police station. He recorded the DDR that I am leaving. Then he recorded the DDR that I went to the judge, recorded his statement and came back, whereas he never came to me. Then I reported this matter to the senior superintendent police. Departmental inquiry was held and he was punished. So if it can happen with the magistrate, who is the Ilaka magistrate, and the SH of that area is doing, he can do with the witnesses also. So that is one aspect regarding the witness. The other witnesses may be the complainant who has lodged the complaint. For that, there are sufficient provision that when at the time of judgment, the court finds that it is expedient and in the interest of justice that this witness, he has lied before the court and he should be tried. Then the procedure is there, he has to be followed. Then an inquiry has to be held under section 340 CRPC. And after giving him an opportunity, a complaint has to be lodged against him. So if the complaint is lodged, then that witness is tried. That case is tried as a state case and the witness is tried and punished. Because there are two statements. One is the complaint made before the police. The other is made before the court. And sometime before the court, he made contradictory statement. One day he states one thing, the other day he states something else. So there are contradictory statements. So he can be tried for that. But practically what is happening, that judges are overburdened. They think who will hold the inquiry, who will file the complaint, who will become the complainant. So they avoid it. I'm talking about the mindset. So that has to change.
This is by Sameer Goyal. He says, similar to 313 CRPC, do we have any law wherein victim/petitioner can be questioned at an initial stage just to check the veracity of the petitioner will remain the same in his words in due course of trial? As in many cases, there are backouts and unnecessary delay and abuse of law. Or what are your suggestions to improve the system?
The procedure in the CRPC is very clear. First, he has to be in the state cases. There has to be charge sheet. Only then the witness can be summoned. There is no procedure available under the CRPC where the witness can be examined before the trial. Of course, there is one provision where during investigation, the witness is examined under section 164 CRPC before the magistrate so that he doesn't turn hostile. Then the witness is examined on oath. And then that statement is proved during the trial. And if that witness turns hostile, it can be used against him.
So this is he proclaims himself to be a victim of false cases. He says that there is a remedy in the CPC of under section 35 for 35B for imposition of cost. Do we have the powers under the CRPC for imposition of cost wherein the state and its machinery is working slow or dilly-dallying the matter?
Yes, there are provisions. I have already pointed out that under section 250 CRPC, the magistrate can grant the compensation. Of course, it is maximum up to the limits of his powers to impose the fine. Under section 357 CRPC, when the offense carries the imprisonment and the fine also, and the fine is imposed, the court can always grant a part of the fine as compensation to the victim. So what is done in such cases? Normally in session cases, the heavy fine is imposed and major part of the same is given to the victim as compensation. You might be remembering that in one of the cases before the Punjab and High Court, in case of kidnapping of a minor girl, the compensation of rupees 50,000 was awarded to the victim. And it was ordered to be recovered from the property of the accused. So that was actually recovered also. So these powers are there.
So another question would be, he says that interim maintenances are always prioritized. But after the orders are passed, there is always a dilly-dallying by the wife invariably. So what is the remedy to avoid that? Because they feel that, in fact, the maintenance which was given as an interim was actually disproportionate to what had actually to be given. Are there any remedies for that?
In the lighter vein, there is no remedy against the wife. But I see that here also the mindset works. The procedure is there that when the interment is granted, the proceedings or maintenance starts, the witnesses of the first party are examined, then cross-examined. And if the judge is proactive, he can always curtail the unnecessary cross-examination. You see, in such cases, the husband and wife keep fighting in the court, leveling allegations. So the judge can confine the cross-examination only to the relevant part and then cut short the same. And of course, then after granting short adjournment, it can be decided. But then it all depends upon the judge. So for that, he has to be trained and sensitized.
This is by Ali. He says, is there any time limit for magistrate to commit the case for sessions after the filing of charge?
No, I think there is no such time limit is given. But there are judgment law where the time limit is given. Ordinarily, it has to be committed as early as possible after completing the formalities under section 207 CRPC, that is supplying the copy of the documents relied on prosecution. But there was one judgment of our Punjab and High Court that it has to be committed within 30 days. So by and large, the case is committed within 30 days. And if there is a delay, and if there are reasons beyond the control of the court, then it is one thing that accused are not being produced or one other thing. Otherwise, it has to be committed within 30 days.
Jaidat Sharma asks, is there any remedy in case the judge is granting dates upon dates to the opposite party, even though there is no application for adjournment in this regard?
So you see, if the judge behaves like that, there is administrative remedy. Of course, judicial remedy is that there is enough is enough. One can approach the High Court under Article 482 CRPC and say that, look, the judges are granting adjournments, and the court can always order speedy trial and fix the time frame for that. In many cases, done that, the court is directed to decide the case within 1 month, 2 months, or 6 months, like that. In addition to that judicial remedy, there is administrative remedy also. The party can always approach the session judge in case the officer is not the session judge and request him to direct the concerned judge to speedily decide the case. Then there is administrative judge for every district. The party can also approach the administrative judge on the administrative side to intervene. And I think in many cases it works. You see, in many cases, the High Court have been, in one case, there was one very, famous case of one gangsters were killed near Fagwada on GT Road in the presence of the police. The case was before me. I directed the trial be concluded within a time frame. So the police was not bringing the witnesses. The police was directed to bring the witnesses. The accused were coming from different places. They were ordered to be confined to one jail to facilitate the trial. And the trial was concluded in that time. So that remedies, judicial as well as administrative remedies, are there.
So this is by Vamshi Krishna. He says, what remedy would exist when, in spite of a direction from the High Court to dispose of the case in a time-bound manner, yet the matter is being tried? Because one always feels one shouldn't go for a contempt because there's a direction on the judicial side though.
Then again, the application under 482 CRPC can be filed. That is the judicial remedy. Or on the administrative side, it can be brought to the notice of the session judge or the administrative judge. Look, this order is there, it is not being complied with. So once even if the verbal instructions are issued, the officer becomes sensitive and he decides the case. as a session judge, whenever the such matter is brought to my notice, I think it had the desired result. It had the result.
Yes, sir. So amongst us, we have Deepak Bajaj. He's a lawyer. You would have seen him appearing before your good self. Plus, he is also taking classes on law. So he, before the session, he said he was quite excited to hear you, and he said that he too has certain insights. So we are unmuting Deepak Bajaj. Over to you, Deepak. Deepak.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Yes, I am audible.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
Of course. Liars are always audible.
Yes. Although my lords are...
Oh, he's saying whether without fees I am audible or not.
Thank you, my lords.
But I'm saying there are institutions like amicus and legal. So he can think it is an amicus and he's assisting in the right perspective.
Yes.
That's right.
Welcome.
Although my lords have very nicely explained the entire situation of speedy trial, but on the basis of my experience in trial courts, my suggestions are: number one, at the time of the framing of charge, where sometimes the defense counsel is able to satisfy that there is no even prima facie case made out, then the approach of the trial judges is that it will be seen later on. So it somehow affects the valuable right of the accused. So my suggestion is that some flexibility and balance should be adopted, and magistrates should be sensitized, as my lords have pointed out, that where there are genuine cases, then power of discharge should be taken or should be used, rather than mechanically saying that let the charge be framed and we will see later on, because that means wastage of judicial time and dragging the accused to face the trial. Second is, as my lords have pointed out, that is section 294, which is called as admission and denial in those cases where the documentary evidence is there. I have seen in the trial courts, in spite of this provision being part of the code, it has been very rarely used. And if it is being used, it will save a lot of time of the trial courts. So the trial judges, if they have been active to use it seriously or in a rapid effort of the evidence and value of time will be used. My third suggestion is that we see in the trial court, during the presence of the witness is a complex problem. Sometimes the court has to issue a bailable warrants or not. So my suggestion is that if some independent agency like a police can be formed only for the purpose of the compliance of the court order, they must be given a limited power. Like in some other countries, it is being happened. So since in India, we say that police is overburdened and they are performing the court's duty at the last in the priority. So if some independent agency just for helping out the court can be formed in times to come, it will save the time. My fourth suggestion is the use of the provision of section 311 of Code of Criminal Procedure by the honorable courts. Because sometimes it is seen that the investigating officer has intentionally left out an important witness, but the court feels that that witness is very important for the case, then the court has a power under section 311 and section 165 of Indian Evidence Act to call that particular witness purely in the interest of justice and for the assistance of the court. And my last suggestion is, sir, that where in the case of the witnesses who is falsely, the provisions of section 340 Code of Criminal Procedure, my lords have also dealt with this, should be used. Because as if we see as per statistics, these provisions are not being used. So meaning thereby a wrong signal is being given outside the world that if in India, in trial, the witness deposits falsely, nothing can be done. So these provisions are very much in the code, and if they have been, trial judges have been directed to use it, then I think this scenario will be very good. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Deepak Bajaj, I will take your questions, suggestions one by one.
Sir.
So I think it comes again to the same thing, the mindset.
Please, Manoj.
Mindset. So far as the discharge of the accused is concerned, I fully agree with you that if from the statement of the witnesses and the documents, no case is made out, the accused has to be discharged. I don't know why the officers are fearful. During my career, I think there are not large number of, but some cases in which I discharge the accused at the charge stage, where there is only one accused, and in cases where there are more than one accused, discharge some of them, saying that there is no evidence against them. It can be done. Nobody questioned me. Nobody questioned me. Nobody asked me. High Court never asked me. But anyhow, now the officers, the judges, they are fearful that if they discharge somebody, the allegations will leveled. Allegations are leveled against the judges, of course. There is no doubt about that. Probably they are fearful of the complaints filed against them, questioning their integrity. And once a complaint is filed, the way it is dealt with on the administrative side, it calls for some corrective path. Similarly, you see 294, it can be used. The provision is there. It is for the judge. They have to be sensitized about it. Regarding the process serving agency, I may share with you that in every district, there is a process serving agency under the senior superintendent of police. When I was session judge, I used to talk to the senior superintendent of police, and a nodal officer is appointed of the rank of SP, who will supervise all these process serving agency work. And whenever a summons are given, summons are given to the prosecution, they say public prosecutor, and is told that get it served. He will give it to the nodal officer, and the nodal officer will ensure that the summons are served either on telephone, through SMS, WhatsApp, whatever there is, or personally. And in most of the cases, witnesses do come present. So that is already there. Of course, the powers under 311 and 340 can be exercised, but then the judge has to be proactive. There is no bar. If the judge at the time of framing of charge or later stage find that some witness has been is a material witness, he can be summoned. I tell you one case where is one case involving some government officers. The prosecution gave up some important witnesses, of course, on the instruction of their political bosses. So the public prosecutor made the statement that I give up the witnesses. I said, okay, you can make the statement. I record the statement, say that he give up the witnesses. Then I pass the order section 311 that these are the material witnesses. They are summoned under 31 CRPC and they are ordered to be examined. They were examined and those officers were ultimately convicted on the basis of those statements. So that provision is there. Then it is for us, everybody, the liars, the judges, the liars have to support the judges that way, that they have, if they are proactive, they should discourage the complaints. The litigants, they come to them with so many stories, they should discourage them. So if there is a coordination between bar and the bench, and the judges are sensitized by the High Court and they are told to be bold and be proactive, then I think there is no problem in holding speedy trial of not only the criminal cases, but even the civil cases.
Right.
We need to change the mindset.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you, my lords. Thank you, Manoj.
So this is by again this so-called false case victim. He says, what is the manner of encouraging the video conferencing and speeding up of the trial?
You say the video conferencing can be helpful only, I personally feel, in case of some witnesses, say the formal witnesses, the doctor, who are to state whatever according to the record. But in case of the material witnesses, say the victim, complainant, and the eyewitnesses, I feel that their examination in the court is must. Because when a person appears before the judge, he is sensitive that he is appearing in the court. And there is some impression on his mind to speak the truth. Moreover, the judge can see his demeanor, he sees how he is reacting and how he is behaving. So he can record his demeanor also. And wherever necessary, the judge can intervene. But when he is appearing through video conferencing, you don't know who is standing behind him or by his side and what instructions are being passed on to him. So I feel that in case of material witnesses, they need to be examined in the court. However, the formal witnesses or some technical witnesses, they can be examined through video conferencing.
Thank you, sir. Just we will take the last question, though questions are coming on. Azad Singh says, with the right to speedy trial, there are a lot of judgments right from Khatun of 1980. Then time and again, the judgments are coming, but what is the remedy according to you so that actually there is a speedy trial?
The remedy lies in changing the mindset. I told you, everybody, that sufficient provisions are there, the guidelines are there. What is required to be changed? The mindset of all the stakeholders. Say first, the investigating agency, then the judge, then the liars, then the witnesses, and the parties who are otherwise not witnesses. Their mindset is required to be changed. For that, all the stakeholders can be sensitized, but one or the other way, to ensure that they act according to the law and according to the guidelines and hold these trials speedily.
Thank you, sir. We couldn't have got better insights, and rather to the, I would share with you privately few persons who sometimes felt that this platform could be more woman-oriented and we are supporting them. But now I've received the message also on the WhatsApp and privately also to the effect that we have got a neutral share. The questions, we always say to them that you post the question, we'll pose it to the keynote speaker, and we invariably believe that whenever the question is posed, they're all neutral. One sometimes carries the impression, but as they say, there are always three sides of the story, yours, his, and what you perceive otherwise. Be that as may, sir, we have enjoyed the session thoroughly. The insights received from you are quite insightful, and I personally feel that the participants who have watched us on the Facebook as well as on the platform would have actually cherished the way the insights have been given by your good self. And tomorrow, in our pursuance and an endeavor of the continuous sessions of webinars, tomorrow we have the session of Prevention of Corruption Amendment Act 2018, its analysis. Do join with us. We would be having Mr. A.S. Rai, an IPS officer and additional DGP NRI cell, along with Mr. Baljinder Singh Sarang, additional district and session judge Punjab, and he's a member faculty Chandigarh Judicial Academy. Those who had been connected with us, they know that the insights given by Mr. Baljinder Singh Sarang on NDPS Act has already been well received, not only on the platform, Facebook, as well as on the YouTube. Do stay connected with us. Everyone stay safe, stay happy. So the last parting words from you on today's webinar, and then we would be closing the session.
Because I feel that we are one of the best in the world, if not the best. We have got the talent, we have got the means. Our judiciary is handling a heavy workload, which is not seen anywhere. I have seen the courts in Europe. What they are doing is just a fraction of the work done by us. What we need, the committed officers, the committed liars who are committed to the system and have the willpower. Then our judicial system can become the best in the world, not one of the best, but the best in the world. It is already, the procedure is already one of the best, and we can always become the best. Thank you very much.
So the point well taken that we all, as they say, that every clock has three hands. One of the seconds, the other of the minutes, and third is of the hours. And if they work in tandem, the movement is always on the positive direction. So the points that we all move all three in the right directions, we'll always have not only the speedy trial, but the confidence of the society and the society at large would continue to be built, because today also, once we say that judiciary is one of the limbs on which the society moves, because of the active actions of the judiciary, the fate of the society is built up on the basis of the judgments, and judges like you and all other judges who have helped in the dispensation of the justice in the right way. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe, stay blessed, and do stay connected with us tomorrow at 5 p.m. on the insights of the Prevention of Corruption Act. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.